Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick.
I'm Ian.
Today we're talking about the classic Bruce Springsteen album, Nebraska. There's a bunch of links down below. Make sure you check them out. There's links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist we put together every week, and the Patreon page. Make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure to see a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time we release new episodes. So Nebraska was released in September of '82. It was Bruce Springsteen's sixth studio album, and musically it was very different than his first five albums. His first five albums had this like high energy, kind of optimistic vibe, I would say, to those albums. And stylistically, Nebraska was very different. Nebraska was mostly acoustic. It was recorded. It was produced by Bruce himself. It had this like almost kind of darker tone to the album, and it was, like I said, very different than anything he had done before. So the background on the album is the reason that it sounds so different is it was supposed to be an album where Bruce was going to record it with his E Street Band like he had with all of his previous albums, and at that time, previously, Bruce had spent a lot of money going back and forth from recording studio to home, working on albums, writing things, and kind of bringing them back and forth to a month later to the studio to try to work on them with the band. So when he went in to record Nebraska, he decided he was going to do like a 4-track demo at home. He was going to try to get the bare bones of these albums together, or of these songs together, and bring them to the band to kind of record all together and kind of flesh out their overall sound. So he recorded, I don't even remember how many songs it was. It was like 20 tracks that he recorded total. And when he brought the album to the band to record, they did record all those songs. And you can go back, I think they call it Electric Nebraska. And most of it's never been released before. Bruce didn't like the overall sound of it. He thought the songs, the original versions of them sounded, they were more raw. There were raw, or like more personal versions of those songs. And when we recorded them with the band, it just didn't really work to the way he wanted it to. So they decided to release it as just those 4-track demos. And that's why you got such a different sound between this and all of his other albums that came out before. And kind of the interesting thing is about the recordings for Nebraska is some of those songs did work with a full band. Mm-hmm. I think they took 8 tracks that he worked on. He used the 4-track recordings, went in, recorded them with the full band, and then liked those versions. And 8 of those tracks became Born in the USA, including Born in the USA. If you like that song, go back. You can. I think it's available on YouTube. You can listen to the 4-track demo version of it. Very different. It's got this darker tone to the song. Kind of matches the lyrics, I think, a little bit better.
Or the overall meaning of the song.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of cool how he had all these tracks, which I think he recorded like 10 of them in one night at one point. A chunk of it became Nebraska, and then the rest of it became Born in the USA, which, as good as Nebraska and those albums that came out before, Born in the USA was, I think, the huge album.
That was the big Bruce Springsteen album.
So that's kind of the background on the album. As far as like the production work on the album, it's not great, but I think that kind of lends itself to the overall style and sound of the album. Bruce's voice doesn't sound great at times. Right. It kind of sounds a little echoey at times, which they add a reverb to his voice and everything in the mix. But I think, like, stylistically, I think had that been a properly recorded album, it maybe wouldn't have had that, I think, the same feel that it does.
And to be completely honest, I'm not blown away by the album. But I like that raw element of it. That kind of Americana sound to it that I don't think would have been there. I've never listened to the electric versions of the songs or the band versions of the songs. But I think the band versions, just listening to the album, if it wasn't so raw, if it wasn't so like
rough,
it feels like any soul that is there in the album would have been lost. Yeah. To me, it's the saving grace for the album for me, because I am not a big Bruce Springsteen fan overall. And going in and actually listening to a full album, this is the first time I've ever really done it. Yeah. I've never listened to any of his albums all the way through. I will say that I have a feeling that because of how this turned out, in a sense, would dictate what Bruce Springsteen's later recordings would be like. Stuff he's done, say, in the last 20 to 30 years, relative to what he did 45, 50 years ago. Much more like
roots-based,
bluesy.
Which he has done that, intermittently. Over the last 20, 25 years.
Going back, what's the name of that? Is it Human Touch?
Yeah, which is it's not a good album.
It's not, but I can see
elements
of this in that.
No.
So I guess as far as that goes, it shows that he's more than just the dancing in the dark guy.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people who aren't huge Springsteen fans, that's all they're going to see is Born in the USA and Dancing in the Dark.
Yeah. I think Born in the USA and Born to Run are his two best albums. Mm-hmm. I would put Nebraska just below that, though. I know a lot of Bruce Springsteen fans absolutely love Nebraska, and so do I. I think it is a really good album. I just think it's just kind of a notch, just a hair below those other two albums. And kind of going back to what you were saying, though, is like, I'm not the biggest Bruce Springsteen fan either. I do love... I shouldn't say love. I really like, the beginning part of his career, from his debut album, probably through Tunnel of Love. I think was like the best period of his career. But I do think he has some really big, overblown songs that have been so overplayed over the years that it's really kind of hard to listen to. Even like Born in the USA is one of those tracks, which that was the album that really got me into Bruce Springsteen when I was like, 6, 7 years old. But even listening to some of those tracks is kind of hard, all these years later. And I think the way the album really kicks off with the title track, Nebraska, and it's like this haunting song with just Bruce, an acoustic guitar, and a harmonica. Mm-hmm. I think is a great way to kind of kick off how this album is going to go. That's the one thing I can say about this album. I think it's, as far as the sequencing of the songs, it's only a 10-track album, so it's not a whole lot of sequencing that has to go into it, but I love the way that they kicked off the album. It's got some of my favorite tracks. Like the first 3 or 4 tracks on there are all incredible. Nebraska, Atlantic City, Mansion on the Hill. Those 3 tracks are probably my 3 favorite on the album. I know Johnny 99, I think it was Highway Patrolman, ended up being covered by Johnny Cash around like the mid 80s. I think Johnny's versions that he did in the mid part of the 80s, I think, are probably better tracks overall than the versions on here, because Johnny's voice, especially at that time, I think kind of lends itself a little bit better to this style of song.
Well, it's that Americana vibe to it that, I don't know. When I say Americana, I'm not even sure if I'm using that appropriately, but that...
It's like the outlaw country kind of vibe.
Yeah, or even just middle America kind of...
Blue collar. And that's exactly the feel. The feel on this album to me is very blue collar.
Yeah.
As far as like songs I wasn't a big fan of, I think State Trooper is the only track on here I can kind of do without. I love those 3 tracks that open the beginning of the album. Highway Patrolman's really good. Used Cars is okay. My Father's House is great. Reason to Believe, which I think is a great way to end the album. Probably my favorite tracks on here. It's like I said, of the 10 or so tracks on this album, just that one skip for me. I don't know how
I definitely agree, because I mean, again, it wasn't it wasn't an album that blew me away, but the initial starting of the album, the first, we'll say, quarter to a half of the album, I was really engaged, and then I felt like I was kind of not so much after that.
The middle part of the album, I think, has
kind of loses me. It lost me a little bit, and then I feel like I might have even checked out in the last couple.
Yeah,
tracks.
I will say that State Trooper, Used Cars, they kind of have some of that kind of same kind of feel to it, maybe a little bit. So I kind of I can see what you're saying there. Yeah. But I think as far as like total albums go, I think this is probably Bruce's most complete album. As much as I love Born to Run, as much as I love Born in the USA, I think there's more skippable tracks on both of those albums than there are on this one. Like overall, I know you won't agree with this score, but I'd probably go an 8.5 out of 10. It's just one of those albums that I can kind of go back through and listen to time and time again, because there's really nothing that's been, really overplayed on this album, I think.
No, definitely not overplayed. And I guess if I had to give it a rating, based solely on a one-time listen, and look at it not necessarily in the scheme of Bruce Springsteen's career, but just as an album overall, I don't have a problem giving it a 7.5 out of 10.
Which is a lot higher score than I thought you would have given it.
If the only way I was going to give it lower is if at like 2 tracks in, I'm like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like that. And like I said, I did kind of check out maybe near the end a little bit, but the first quarter to a half of the album kept me engaged.
It starts out with a bang. Like I said, I love those opening 3 tracks. I think it was really a great entry into the album.
Right.
I guess I should add that I've got the Vinyl Me Please version of this, which comes with this cool little art photo, and it sounds great. I can't rave enough about Vinyl Me Please and the sound quality that the pressings have. So if you don't have a copy of it...
Packaging's really nice.
The packaging is really nice also. So if you don't have a copy of it, I think this is kind of the way to go with this album. Well, so we got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop us a comment down below. I'd love to know what you guys think of Nebraska. How would you rate it? Do you think it's up there with some of the greatest albums that Bruce Springsteen ever released? Love to know what you guys' opinions are. Ian, I guess before we kind of end the show, how would you rate this album? Do you think it's probably the best thing that Bruce ever did?
Again, I've never really listened to all of his albums in their entirety, so It's the only one I've ever listened to in its entirety. I guess by that standard, sure, I could say that.
I will say that, like, I know you're not a big Bruce fan, but I would say go out and check out probably the 3 albums that came out before Nebraska.
I'm tempted to listen to the electric versions of these.
Yeah.
Or, find
a lot of the electric versions that he recorded with the E Street Band have been released over the years. There's some that haven't, but they are available to go out there.
And equally, maybe I'm curious to hear at least the Born in the USA, the rough cut of that.
Yeah,
I'd be curious to hear it.
Yeah, I definitely. If you haven't listened to that one, definitely go back out and check it out. It's available on YouTube. But let us know what you guys think. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure to see a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. And that's all we got. Until next time.
Talk to y'all later.
Keep on spinning. Peace.